Okay, welcome everybody back to our study of Mishnayot, Masechet Berachot. We're up to chapter 8, beginning a new chapter today. This chapter is all about mahlokot, arguments between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel as they pertain to different things related to a seudah, to a meal. The first of which is very familiar to us, the order of the Berachot when a person makes Kiddush. Elu devarim sheben Bet Shammai u Bet Hillel baseudah. The following is a list of disagreements between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel as it pertains to things related to meals. Bet Shammai omrim mevarech al hayom ve'achar kach mevarech al hayayin. Bet Shammai say that in the order of the Kiddush on holidays and on Shabbatot, we first make the beracha on the day. In other words, Mekadesh Shabbat, Mekadesh Yisrael ve'azemanim, whatever the day might be. Ve'achar kach mevarech al hayayin. And only afterwards do we make the beracha of Borei Pri HaGefen. Bartenura says the logic of Bet Shammai here is that one only comes to make the beracha on Borei Pri HaGefen when the day has already been sanctified. So what happened first? The day has already been sanctified, Shabbat or your holiday has already entered, and then the person is coming to sit at his table to have the meal. So he should acknowledge the entrance of the day first, and then the fact that he's sitting down to have the cup of wine for Borei Pri HaGefen. Bet Hillel omrim, Bet Hillel disagree. They say mevarech al hayayin ve'achar kach mevarech al hayom. First, we make the beracha of Borei Pri HaGefen, and then afterwards we make the beracha on the sanctity of the day, whether it's Mekadesh Shabbat or Mekadesh Yisrael ve'azemanim, etc., etc. What's Bet Hillel's logic behind this? Bet Hillel say that one would not be in the first place sitting down to a meal with a cup of wine if not for the fact that the day was holy, right? So the day is what is being gorem, right? The fact that the wine is coming is a testament to the day, right? So he says over here, if you look at the Bartenura, he says, "Bevarech al hayayin tehila vehu adin lamekadesh al hapad shehayayin o hapad gormin lekiddush hayom." I would not be making a kiddush if I didn't have wine or bread. In other words, I made kiddush already in my tefillah. In my prayer, I already said Mekadesh Shabbat, Mekadesh Yisrael ve'azemanim. So why am I saying it again over here? I'm doing it because I want to do it over a cup of wine or over the bread. That's what's causing me. So it's the wine that is being gorem that is causing me to make the kiddush in the first place. So therefore, I should make the Borei Pri HaGefen, and then I should go ahead and make the kiddush hayom. Our halacha follows Bet Hillel. We always say Borei Pri HaGefen at the outset, and then the kiddush hayom to follow. Let's go to Mishnah Bet. Mishnah Bet is involved in the laws of Tum'ah and Tahara. A person wants to make Kiddush or a person wants to drink wine before eating bread and making Netilat Yadayim. So the Mahloket Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel over here is, does a person do Netilat Yadayim before pouring and diluting the cup of wine, or should they dilute in the cup of wine and drink the wine and then do Netilat Yadayim on the bread? And the Mahloket here between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel has to do with the laws of Tum'ah and Tahara. So before we read the Mishnah, it's important to give a little bit of background about Tum'ah and Tahara. Tum'ah comes from things that are called avot Tum'ah, sources of Tum'ah. Sources of Tum'ah could include a dead body, a corpse, a sheretz, an insect, a zav, someone who had a certain emissions. These are people or things that are avot Tum'ah, sources of Tum'ah. When something comes in contact with an av Tum'ah, with a source of Tum'ah, it becomes a rishon Tum'ah, becomes a first level. When something comes in contact with the first level, it becomes a sheni Tum'ah, second, and so on and so forth, which means that Tum'ah can be contracted and passed down from one thing to another. However, as Tum'ah gets passed from one object to another, it becomes weaker. And so the amount of things which the next level of Tum'ah can contaminate become fewer and fewer. So an Ava Tum'ah can contaminate anything. A Rishon Tum'ah is limited, can only contaminate Adam and Kelim. A Sheni Tum'ah can only contaminate food, terumah. A Shelishi Tum'ah can only do terumah, etc., etc. So as the levels of Tum'ah weaken, it becomes more and more narrow about how other things that could become Tameh. With the following exceptions. This is all based on the Torah. However, the Hachamim instituted a number of different takanot, gezerot, related to the topic of Tum'ah, in order to strengthen Tum'ah. One of them has to do with liquids. Liquids, although you would make the argument that a Rishon Tum'ah who came in contact with the liquid should become a what? Should become a Sheni Tum'ah. However, if it's a liquid, it remains a Rishon. Furthermore, if a Sheni Tum'ah comes in contact with a liquid, it bumps up to become a Rishon Tum'ah. So liquids become increasingly more severe in their laws of tum'ah and tahara than standard things. Now, another thing, no, not only do liquids transfer, but liquids themselves become higher. So that means that if a food was a rishon l'tum'ah, it can make something a sheni. When a liquid comes in contact with that food, it could also make a sheni. It stays a rishon, and it could also make a sheni, which is a big Kiddush. Then you have the tum'ah of the hands. The Hachamim also decreed that yadayim sheniyot l'tum'ah, and when yadayim come in contact with something, when a person puts water on their hands, then their hands become, the water itself also becomes tameh. So hands have the ability to contaminate at a status quo of sheni l'tum'ah, which is very important. Having all of this in mind, we now come to our Mishnah, which discusses diluting or pouring a cup of wine before or after one does netilat yadayim. And the hands here are significant because the hands are going to touch things and contaminate them. And we're dealing with diluting a cup of wine, which means we're dealing with what? Liquid, water. So which also has a severity of tum'ah. So let's read. We're going to use the Rabbeinu Ovadia here in a big way to help us. Bet Shammai Omrim, Bet Shammai say, Notlim la yadayim ve'achar kach mozgim et hakos. You have to first do netilat yadayim, and then you can come to dilute the cup of wine, let's say for Kiddush, and make the beracha of Kiddush, and then do hamotzi lachemina on it. Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel Omrim, Bet Hillel disagree, the order is reversed. They say mozgim et hakos, first pour the cup of wine, dilute it, ve'achar kach notlim la yadayim, and then do netilat yadayim for the bread. What's the logic of each one? You have to read this lengthy Rabbeinu Ovadia. Rabbeinu Ovadia says the following. He says, for Bet Shammai, you have to first do netilat yadayim, then dilute the cup. Why? He says, she'imata omer mozgim et hakos tehila. For Bet Shammai, if you were to dilute the cup of wine first, gezerah, we're worried, we have a decree, shema yitam'u mashkim shenafnu be'achorei hakos mehamat yadayim. Perhaps in touching the cup, liquid, when you dilute it, some of the water will spill over to the outside of the cup. And then when you grab the cup with your hands and you touch the cup with that water that's on the backside, your hands will contaminate through that water, which will contaminate the outside of the cup, right? Even before washing one's hands, hands have a status quo of sheni l'tumah, as we said. And then they contaminate liquid, and what happens to liquid? Whenever liquid, it becomes a rishon l'tumah, it goes up, and then that rishon l'tumah can make the cup. So the hands are two, a sheni l'tumah. They touch the water that fell on the outside of the cup, makes the water rishon, and then the water is on the outside of the cup, it makes the cup tameh, the outside of the cup tameh, right? Liquid that became tameh, they make utensils tameh midrabbanan. But the rabbis were lenient on this tum'ah. Any utensil whose outside became tameh using liquid, the inside does not become tameh. Only the outside stays tameh. And not the handle and not the ears of the only the outside of the cup. So maybe we can still get away with it. Okay, fine. Outside of the cup is tameh. Big deal. Why can't we drink with a cup that's outside is tameh? Says Bet Shammai, the Savre Bet Shammai have the opinion, asur lehishtamesh bekos she'achorav tameot. You're not allowed to use a cup whose outside is tameh. Why? Even though its inside is not tameh. How come? We're nervous that maybe some splashes will come from the inside of the cup to the outside of the cup. And the liquid will become tameh because of the outside of the cup. And then it's going to make your hands to become tameh. So if you didn't do netilat yadayim first, what's going to happen? Your hands are going to touch the outside cup that's liquid. The liquid is then going to make the outside of the cup tameh. And if you use that cup that's tameh for Kiddush, the liquid might come to the outside, right? And then it's going to make your hands tameh later on. And so what did you do netilat yadayim afterwards for? It's not going to help you. You're using a tameh cup during the meal, and that tameh cup is making your hands tameh all throughout the course of the meal. So what did you do? So therefore, you got to cut the tum'ah at the source, says Bet Shammai. You got to wash your hands to start the meal. If you wash your hands to start the meal, none of this gets set in motion. The tum'ah, none of it's going to happen because the hands are not making the cup's not making the hands. We have no problem. So there's a lot of gezerot here by Bet Shammai. A lot of gezerot here. Your hands are tameh. They're going to make the water tameh. The water is going to make the cup tameh. then when you go to wash your hands for bread, and then you come back to your cup, the cup's going to make your hands tameh. Now you got to wash all over again. The whole meal you're going to be washing over again. That's Bet Shammai. You're not allowed to use a tameh outside cup for the meal. That's what Bet Shammai say. You got to wash your hands from the beginning. Now let's go to Bet Hillel. ובית הלל סברה אין איסור להשתמש בכלי שאחוריו טמאות. First thing first is Bet Hillel hold that a person does not need to use, does not have a problem using a cup which is outside is tameh. Hilkach mozgim et hakos tehila. Therefore, you don't have a problem to pour the cup of wine first, right? V'shotim oto, and then you drink it. V'acharkach notlim layadayim, and then go ahead and wash your hands for bread, as we do. She'im ata omed notlim layadayim tehila. Now, Bet Hillel have a different problem. They say, I have a problem with Bet Shammai. If we wash our hands first before the meal, before the cup of wine, we wash our hands first, and then we pour the cup of wine. Maybe the outside of the cup is tameh, because according to Bet Hillel, there's no problem to use an outside cup that's tameh. They don't have a problem with using a cup that's outside is tameh. What's wrong with using that? The Bet Hillel are nervous. A person will wash his hands before he does the cup of wine. Maybe his hands won't be fully dried. And then when he touches the cup which is tameh is going to make his hands tameh. So what did he wash his hands for? So according to Bet Hillel, you know what he says? Wash with your cup of do your cup of wine first. Don't worry about the outside being tameh. Don't worry about any problems. Once that's done, then come back, wash your hands, and you finished. And then you can continue your meal, and you don't have any problems. He says, if he washed his hands first and he didn't dry them properly, then if he touches the outside of the cup, which is tameh, it's going to make his hands to become tameh. And then he's going to come to eat with impure hands. So therefore, Bet Hillel say, do your cup of wine first, don't worry about it. Then when you're ready to eat your meal, go wash your hands, dry them properly, and go straight to your meal. And now you don't have any problems of eating while you are tameh. And so Bet Shammai are more worried about the problems of using the outside cup that's tameh and remaking it tameh, and that's why they want you to cut the nitilat yadayim from the beginning. Bet Hillel is saying if you do nitilat yadayim from the beginning, then you might come to end up touching the cup of wine and contaminating your hands, and then using those for nitilat for the meal. So it's a lot of confusion because we're not used to tum'ah and tahara and what laws it. The crux of this is, can you use a cup that's tameh? And then as a result of that, you have a lot of difference about should you wash first or should you drink first. Bet Hillel, we do always do Kiddush first, and then we go ahead and wash our hands before the meal. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen. Amen.